So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a very short span of time within 30 minutes. The idea is very simple. We want you to cover your current affairs on a daily basis, but we don't want you to spend your entire day just reading the newspaper. Therefore, for your facility, we have come out with this lecture series in which we'll cover the entire day's current affairs within 30 minutes. Now, just watching this lecture in 30 minutes would be job half done, because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well. Why? Well, revision helps in consolidating these current affairs in your memory. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget them. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram platform. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Okay then, let's begin today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. So in total, we'll be covering these 4 topics. Okay, number 1 in this list is, can a sitting judge face an FIR, First Information Report? Basically, this topic is saying that can you launch criminal proceedings against a sitting judge? Okay, there is a lot of controversy going around with respect to this issue. So we will address this issue. We will talk about this. Then, recently, Donald Trump, President of the United States, has announced that they are going to create their own air defense shield, which will be called Golden Dome. Okay. Now, it is a very expensive air defense shield and it's a very expensive project, and it would basically involve high-tech applications or high-tech instruments, okay, including space instruments. So, we'll talk about this Golden Dome air defense. Then, recently, an Indian writer has won International Booker Prize. So what is International Booker Prize? How different it is from Booker Prize? Okay, because International Booker Prize and Booker Prize are 2 different things. We'll talk about this. And in the end, well, we'll talk about core sectors and index of industrial production, IIP, because there was some pessimistic news with respect to these 2 things. So we will talk about this. Okay. So these are the 4 topics that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with, can a sitting judge face an FIR? Now look, the thing is that as you all know, for the past 2-3 months, this issue has been going on. Well, a Delhi High Court judge was in this scandal, okay? Basically, some burnt bags of cash were found at his official residence, and people say that he was, or there are allegations that he was involved in corruption. Now, the thing is that if a sitting judge is involved in corruption, well, it is very difficult to take action against him. Only Supreme Court can take action against him. Okay. And because of this, well, there is a lot of controversy. Okay. Now, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, he said that in-house inquiry ordered by Supreme Court against Justice Yashwant Verma this March does not have any constitutional premise or legal sanctity. And he is asking for an FIR against that judge. Basically, the thing is that if a judge is found, well, if there are credible allegations against a judge, well, you can't do anything about it, okay? The only punishment that a sitting judge of a High Court or a Supreme Court can receive is impeachment. And that is a very difficult process. Apart from impeachment, you can do nothing, okay? Now, to address this issue of erring judges, okay, to address this issue of judges on whom credible allegations are there, well, Supreme Court came out with an in-house inquiry system, okay. In this in-house inquiry system, the Chief Justice of India creates a panel of judges, okay, who basically inquire into the allegations against a particular judge of a High Court or a Supreme Court, okay, and based on their, findings, well, they can say whether a judge is guilty or not. But even if the judge is found guilty, they can't do anything about it. Even Chief Justice of India cannot do anything about it. The maximum that they can do is, well, they can transfer a judge if he's a judge of a High Court from one High Court to another, or the maximum that they can do is contact the Chief Justice of that High Court and remove all the cases from that judge. So that judge won't listen to any cases. That's the maximum that can be done through this in-house inquiry. Okay. And that is why Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has said that we need to do something about it, because this in-house inquiry is also not justice. Okay, if there are credible allegations and if it is proved that the judge was involved in corruption, well, at least you should allow to lodge an FIR against that judge. Okay, but this is a very constitutionally charged issue. Okay, because independence of judiciary is also important, but corruption should also not go unpunished. So it is a very controversial issue. Now, Dhankad has also called for revisiting Supreme Court's K. Veeraswamy judgment. Now, the protection given to judges, High Court and Supreme Court, well, that protection also stems from the 1991 judgment of Supreme Court, which is called K. Veeraswamy case or K. Veeraswamy judgment. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankad said that the Supreme Court needs to revisit and review this judgment because of this judgment, well, you cannot lodge an FIR against a judge. Okay. Now, what is the issue? First of all, let's talk about protection of judges against criminal proceedings. Okay. So, protection of judges. Now, look, the thing is that our constitutional makers and everyone around the world knows that independence of judiciary is very important. It's very critical. Because if judges are continuously scared of FIRs, criminal proceedings and all these things, then they cannot be fair and balanced in their judgments. The thing is that if executive of a country is given power to lodge cases against a judge, okay, then those judges won't be able to give fair judgments, especially in cases which involve the executive. If there is a case against government of a state or government of India, well, the judge cannot be impartial in that, right? Because he would be fearful that the executive might take an action against them. Therefore, judges need to be protected. They need to be fair and impartial, and they can be fair and impartial if they are independent and if they are free from fear of persecution by the executive. Okay, only then they can take or they can give judgments which are anti-executive. They can be fair. So, independence of judiciary is critical for smooth functioning of our polity, and therefore, the Constitution has set a very high bar for initiating action against them. Okay. So, our Constitution says that if you need to initiate any action against the judge, that action is only removal of a judge, which is popularly also known as impeachment. Though Constitution doesn't use the word impeachment, it only uses the word removal. And this process of impeachment is mentioned in Article 124 of the Constitution. And this process is very difficult. The Constitution makers deliberately made this process very difficult because again, they wanted to ensure independence of judiciary. Okay. Now we all know what is the impeachment process of a judge. Okay. You need 2/3 majority in Lok Sabha, 2/3 majority in Rajya Sabha, and then only you can pass an order to remove a judge. So it's a difficult process. Okay. And it goes for both High Court judges and Supreme Court judges. It is because of this difficulty that so far no judge has been impeached, though action or impeachment proceedings have started against some judges, but so far no one has been successfully impeached. Now, the thing is that if there are credible allegations against a judge, then what do you do? Because the removal process is very difficult. Then what can you do against that judge to ensure accountability? Okay, what can you do which can be short of removal? You don't have to remove him, but there should be some form of accountability, right? Now, to address this issue, okay, Supreme Court created an in-house inquiry mechanism. In this in-house inquiry mechanism, well, a panel of judges would be formed by Chief Justice of India, and that Chief Justice of India or that panel would inquire against those allegations. And if a particular judge has been found guilty, well, action would be taken. But that action cannot be anything. Even Chief Justice of India cannot take any other action apart from transfers of a High Court judge and reducing or removing the workload of a judge. Okay, you don't allow him to sit on any bench. That's it. That's all. Okay. Now, this is what Vice President of India, Dhankad, Mr. Dhankad, is talking about. Okay. And he's also saying that you need to basically review K. Veeraswamy versus Union of India judgment. Now, what was K. Veeraswamy case? Now look, the thing is that Justice K. Veeraswamy was Madras High Court Chief Justice. And in 1970s, there were allegations of corruption against him. Therefore, CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, lodged an FIR against him. Now, Justice Veeraswamy went to Madras High Court seeking quashing of that FIR. And he was basically saying that you cannot lodge an FIR against a sitting judge. Why? Because independence of judiciary has to be ensured, and there is no provision in the constitution that says that you can lodge an FIR against a judge. Well, the Madras High Court ruled in favor of CBI, and they said that CBI can lodge an FIR. Therefore, Justice Veeraswamy appealed against this decision of Madras High Court in the Supreme Court. Okay, and Supreme Court took 10-11 years to decide on this matter, and in 1991 they gave a ruling. Okay. Now, when this case was being heard in the Supreme Court had to basically answer two questions. Okay. Look, in our country, corruption against public or corruption done by public servants can be, prosecuted against. Okay. Now, for that, there is Prevention of Corruption Act. As per Prevention of Corruption Act, you can prosecute public servants for corruption done by them. Okay. Now, the question before the Supreme Court was, and this is what Justice K. Veeraswamy was saying, that do you consider judge of a Supreme Court or High Court a public servant? Because if he is a public servant, then he comes under Prevention of Corruption Act. But if he is not a public servant, then you can't lodge an FIR against that judge under Prevention of Corruption Act. Okay, so this was question number one. Question number two was that if a sitting judge is a public servant, then Prevention of Corruption Act says that if you need to prosecute a public servant, you need to take prior permission or sanction of the government. So if the government gives prior sanction that you can lodge a criminal case against this public servant, then only you can lodge a criminal case. You need permission or sanction from the government to lodge a case or start criminal proceedings against a public servant. So the second question was that if a judge is a public servant, then who would give this sanction? Would this power of giving sanction fall on the government? Well, then government would give sanctions against those judges which the government thinks is not friendly to their cause. So that would hamper independence of judiciary. So who is the competent authority to give that sanction also, if he is a public servant? Okay. Now, these two questions were answered by the Honorable Supreme Court in 1991 in this landmark case called K. Veeraswamy case. Now, what did the Supreme Court hold? In a 3-2 verdict, because this was held by a 5-judge bench, this case was heard by a 5-judge bench. The Supreme Court says that yes, a sitting judge can be considered a public servant and a corruption FIR can be lodged against him. Okay. So the Supreme Court answered question number one that yes, he is a public servant. Now, the second question was critical. The second question is then who is the competent authority to grant sanction? Generally, in case of other public servants, the competent authority is the one who has appointed those public servants. So, for example, if we talk about IS officers, then IS officers are appointed by the President of India. So, the competent authority to grant sanction against these IS officers would be the President of India. The thing is that judges, as per our constitution, are also appointed by President of India. Now, by that logic, the power of giving sanction against a sitting judge would also lie on President of India. But that would mean that the government of the day can go against judges that are not friendly to them. So therefore, the Supreme Court says that the power of sanction in this case would lie with Chief Justice of India. So the President does not have this power of giving sanctions for prosecuting a judge. It is the Chief Justice of India. So if Chief Justice of India gives that sanction, then only you can lodge an FIR against him. Okay. Now, Vice President Dhankad Sahab, he is saying that, executive should be given some power. judiciary shouldn't be a closed house. Okay, this is something that Vice President is asking the Supreme Court to review. So this is an entire case. Clear? I hope you understood each and everything. All right then. Let's move on to second news item of the day, and that is Golden Dome air defense, which the America or President Donald Trump has announced. Okay. So US President Donald Trump said he has shortlisted a design for Golden Dome missile defense shield and made General Michael Gutelin General of the US Space Force. So USA has 4 services, defense services, okay? Army, Air Force, Navy, and now USA has a new force called Space Force. So Donald Trump has made the General of US Space Force as in charge of this project of Golden Dome. Now Golden Dome, much like it is actually inspired from Israel's Iron Dome, is basically an air defense system. So drones, aircrafts, missiles, if they are launched on America, well, they would be protected like Iron Dome protects Israel. Okay, so Golden Dome is inspired by Israel's much lauded Iron Dome system. But Iron Dome system has limited technology. It is just a short range ground to air defense system. So whenever a rocket is launched in Israel, well, the radars of Israel detect that rocket and a missile is launched to intercept that rocket. Okay, that is it. And those missiles are short range. But Golden Dome is far more ambitious. Okay, it would be, because Israel is a very small country, but America is a huge country. Okay, so this Golden Dome would protect the entire country. Okay, so it would be massive in scale. Plus, it would not only use radar technologies to detect missiles or incoming aerial threats, and it won't just launch surface to air missiles to basically destroy aerial threats. Well, Golden Dome, it is proposed, will use space sensors also. That is why General of US Space Force is made in charge. Okay, they would use satellite based sensors, not just ground radars to detect aerial threats. They would use space sensors, and under Golden Dome their satellites can even launch missiles to intercept. Okay, and that is new, using missiles from satellites to intercept any aerial threat. Now that is way more ambitious, and this is what Golden Dome project is all about. Okay, so about Golden Dome, Trump said that the system will comprise, among other things, space-based sensors and interceptors. Interceptors are those missiles that basically intercept and destroy any incoming enemy aircraft, enemy missile, enemy rocket, enemy drones. According to the initial plans, the system will comprise thousands of small satellites orbiting Earth, which will intercept any enemy missile mere moments after it is launched. Okay, as of right now, the use of space technology in defense has largely been restricted to reconnaissance. Okay, look, satellites are used for defense purposes. Definitely they are. But they are used for defense purposes only for detection or navigation of your missiles or aircrafts. Okay, GPS and all. But these satellites are not used to launch missiles and intercept enemy aerial threats. This would be a first. And that is why the project cost is around $175 billion. Okay. Now, the name of this project is inspired from Israel's Iron Dome. So let's talk about Iron Dome. Okay. So it was developed in the aftermath of 2006 Israel-Lebanon war. The system contains missiles called the ground-launched Tamir interceptor missiles. Now these Tamir interceptor missiles would basically intercept any aerial threat from the enemy. It contains an array of radar installations that track and monitor aerial threats. Okay, and they can destroy rockets, missiles, artillery shells, aircrafts, helicopters, even drones. Now remember, Iron Dome is just short range, ground-based aerial defense system. Okay, and it does not rely on satellites to detect and monitor aerial threats. For detection and monitoring of aerial threats, they only rely on radars. Okay, not satellites. But Golden Dome is saying that they will rely on satellites as well. not just for detection, but also for firing missiles. Okay. Now, if USA does it, don't you think USA would weaponize space? Because it would basically place weapons, missiles, interceptor missiles in space, right? And weaponization of space is basically prohibited under an international treaty called Outer Space Treaty. Okay. Now, hear me out carefully. As of right now, space technology is only used for, well, navigation basically. But weaponization of space would be a first. Weaponization of space is partially, remember, partially prohibited under Outer Space Treaty of 1967, to which USA, Russia, China are party to. Now, what do we mean by partially? Well, you cannot place nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction in outer space. That's it. But apart from weapons of mass destruction, you can place any other weapons. Okay, that includes interceptor missiles. So technically, despite weaponizing space, USA won't be in violation of Outer Space Treaty because this treaty doesn't prohibit interceptor missiles. They only prohibit nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. Clear? Simple? That would be all. And now let's quickly move on to third news item, which is International Booker Prize. So recently, International Booker Prize was given to Mushtaq. She's the lady. And she wrote a fictional piece of work in Kannada. Okay. Which was translated by, well, Deepa Bhashti in English. And this translated work of Kannada literature was called Heart Lamp in English. And this has received International Booker Prize. This would be the first International Booker Prize for a Kannada writer. Okay. She would be the first Kannada writer to receive this honor. So remember this part. Okay. Now about International Booker Prize. So hear me out carefully. This International Booker Prize was started in 2005 by Booker Foundation. Okay, it was earlier known as Man Booker Prize, but then the official name is now International Booker Prize. Now remember, International Booker Prize is only given to fictional literature, okay, work of fiction, which was written in some other language but was translated into English. Okay, so only translated, that means literary pieces written in other languages but translated into English receive International Booker Prize. Okay, instituted International Booker Prize for translated works. Remember, only for translated works, not for original English works. It is awarded annually for single fiction book translated into English and published in UK or Ireland. Prize money is £50,000 and this prize money is equally distributed between the author and the translator. Okay. The first Indian citizen winner for this International Booker Prize was Gitanjali Shri in 2022 for her Hindi novel which was translated into English called Tomb of Sand. Okay. Now remember, International Booker Prize is given for translated works. For original English works, there is Booker Prize. Okay, so Booker Prize is for original English works, International Booker Prize is for translated English works. Okay, so how is it different from Booker Prize? The Booker Prize was started in 1969. The first person to win was P.H. Newby for his novel Something to Answer For. Again, these are the founders. It is given for fictional literature written in English. It is not for translated works, only English works which have been published in UK or Ireland. Until 2014, only novels written by Commonwealth countries like India, Pakistan, which were once colonized by British. Irish and South African citizens were eligible for this, but then later it was expanded to everyone. The first person to receive Booker Prize, first Indian person of Indian origin. He can be a citizen of any other country, okay? But person of Indian origin to receive this Booker Prize was V.S. Naipaul. Now, he was of Indian origin, but he was basically a citizen of Caribbeans, West Indies, okay? But the first Indian citizen to receive this Booker Prize was Arundhati Roy. Okay, so remember this difference between International Booker Prize and Booker Prize. Okay, and now we'll move on to our last news item, which is core sector and IIP, Index of Industrial Production. Okay, so what was in the news? So India's key infrastructure linked industries in April showed a sharp deceleration. That means decline of 0.5%. At 0.5% in April, the growth of 8 core sectors. Now remember, in India, there are certain industries which are categorized as core sectors, and they are 8 in number. Which are those core sectors? Coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizers, steel, cement, and electricity. These 8 industries are called India's core because our country's entire industrial activity is dependent on these 8 industries. Without coal, there won't be any electricity. Without coal, there won't be any iron and steel. Okay? Without crude oil, there won't be any energy. Without natural gas, again energy. Without refinery products, refinery products are products by refining crude oil, petrol, diesel. There won't be any transportation. Without fertilizer, there won't be any agriculture. Without steel, there won't be any infrastructure, roads, bridges. Same for cement. And electricity is everything for every industry. So that is why these industries are called core. And recently news has been out that these 6 out of these 8 core industries are facing deceleration. Okay, this was in the news. But more about Index of Industrial Production. Okay, so what is Index of Industrial Production? It measures the short-term changes in the volume of production of various industrial sectors. So different industrial sectors, well, what are the changes in their volume of production? So let's suppose iron and steel plant produced 100 kg of steel in 1 month, and next month it produced 110 kgs. So it has shown a growth of 10%. Similarly, all other industries have shown a growth of, let's suppose, 2%, 3% and whatnot. So we take a weighted average of all and we get Index of Industrial Production. Okay, so it provides insights into overall industrial activity. Remember, it is calculated by National Statistical Office under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Okay, and it is calculated on a monthly basis. But the thing is that the data comes out after a 6-week lag. So for example, data for the month of March would come out in mid-May after 6 weeks. So there is a 6-week lag, but data for every month is released. So it is compiled on a monthly basis with a 6-week lag. Now every index requires a base year. Okay, so the base year for Index of Industrial Production is 2011-12. Now, Index of Industrial Production calculates, well, industrial activity of all industries. What about core industries? So the combined weight of core industries within IIP is 40.27%. Okay, combined weight. And within core industries, the highest weightage is given to refinery and lowest weightage is given to fertilizers. Okay, that's all you need to know, though we will study Index of Industrial Production more in our economics lectures. Okay, and with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But like I say this every time, it will add more value if you revise this lecture and if you're consistent with this lecture series. So please do the needful. And on that note, I'll be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.